Then we'll discuss what routing is. We'll discuss what routers do, flow control, how routers send information. Routers make decisions based on their tables. But how are their tables populated? Well, either we type all that information in, or that information is put in by a routing information protocol. So we'll discuss different types of routing information protocols like RIP and IGRP, EIGRP, and then we'll compare and contrast the differences between distance vector and link state protocols. It's very important to know for the test. Then we'll discuss LAN design, local area network design. We'll discuss the difference between full duplex and half duplex and when each one is appropriate. We'll discuss how packets flow through a network. In other words, how does a packet know that it can get into the stream? We'll discuss carrier sense multiple access with collision detection, CCNA CD. We'll also discuss fast Ethernet. Fast Ethernet is 100 megabits per second. We also have gigabit per second Ethernet. We'll discuss all the different speeds of Ethernet and when each one is most appropriate. And we'll discuss the guidelines and distance limitations for Ethernet. That's very important to know for the test. Then we'll turn our attention to the Cisco iOS, the Inter-Network Operating System. We'll overview the iOS, talk about the features of the iOS that we need to know for the test. We'll take a look at boot system configurations, interpreting the iOS image file, backing up the iOS image, loading a new iOS image. We'll also discuss the command line interface. The command line interface is how we communicate with the computer. We'll discuss command line modes in Cisco and the difference between privileged mode and executive mode. We'll talk about the initial setup and configuration. We'll talk about password management, naming and adding a banner, command line history and editing, all the different things that we can do to make the system more functional for our own environment. We'll also talk about the context-sensitive help that's built in to Cisco that helps us to be able to do something even when we're not really sure what we want to do. We'll talk about how we can use context-sensitive help to work with the system and get more out of it. Then we'll discuss network management. We'll talk about all the different commands that we have available to us in the command line interface, like the show commands and the command lists that we can pull up. We'll talk about access lists. Access lists allow us to define what packets can go through certain interfaces. And we'll look at standard access lists and extended access lists and take a look at some examples that we might need to know for the test as well as for real life. And then we'll talk about router security, because security is certainly an important topic in today's environment. So we're going to talk about how we secure our routers, how we set up the passwords so that only we can get in, and what we need to secure in the router. Make sure we've got all of the interfaces in the router secure. So as you can see, we've got a lot to talk about. And we'll end it up with a section on taking and passing the 640-801 test, because the purpose of this training is twofold. Number one, to become familiar and comfortable with the interfaces and with the command line interface with all the Cisco products. But number two, it's that you take and pass the 640-801 test. So let's get started with the OSI model. That's next.